Mr. John Guandolo speak probably 5 times, some in private and some in an open setting. He is a freedom strategist, an educator, an author, a speaker. You'll see his books over here on the side that you can take a look at before you leave. He's a combat veteran Marine, so is my husband. And he's an FBI special agent. He's a SWAT team. He was a SWAT team leader, a strategist, national security professional, trainer, teacher, author, speaker, songwriter, and musician. Maybe we can get him to sing us a song. So I'm just going to say one more sentence. It's a long one. With his wide-ranging background and experience, John Guandolo dedicates his life and work to educating and training people, from everyday citizens to high-level government officials, on the existential threat to America by communists, jihadists, their collaborators, and their financiers. He is probably one of the deepest, well-versed individuals I have ever seen talk about numbers of illegals coming across our border. It's eye-opening. So please welcome John Guandolo.
I might just use my regular voice. Can everybody hear me well? Yeah. Is this okay if you're filming if I do this?
Sure. Why do you think it's louder?
It's okay?
Loud enough for you? Oh, yes.
It's good?
Yes.
All right. If you can't hear me, I can ratchet it up about 7 levels. Good. So I'm going to bounce around tonight, but I want to ask you a couple of questions. How many of you feel confident, raise your hands, that the federal government is doing a great job right now? Just in whatever its normal duties are, not even anything to great. Okay, so for those of you not looking around, nobody's raising their hand. And I will say, I've spoken to groups, private groups, as few as 2, and as many as 7,000 or so. And that's certainly in the last few years, that's the normal opinion. The federal government is not a trusted entity. How many of you believe America is at war with something? Someone is waging war against the United States. Okay, so that is all of one. Okay, and I think it's just because they're not paying attention to it yet. Okay, so who are we at war with?
China.
Okay, China? Communism?
The left.
The left. What left?
The American left.
Okay. What else?
Those who are planning to control the new world order.
Okay. People that want to install what people identify as a new world order, whatever that is.
Iran.
Iran, okay.
Islam.
Islam in general? Yes?
And the spiritual side, the dark forces.
Okay. It's a spiritual battle. What's interesting is, the last several, minus Mark Milley, the previous chairman of the Joint Chiefs have said, and agreed, especially when they're talking about PTSD, that human beings are physical and spiritual, and both need to be addressed. So that means there clearly has been an acknowledgement throughout America's history that there is a spiritual side of life, and it's important. Okay, what else? So far, that's a lot. What else? Anyone else want to throw something else in the ring?
Russia.
Okay, Russia. All right, well, all of those are correct. The problem is, I'm going to ask you another one. October 7th, 2023, what happened? Okay, who attacked Israel?
Palestinians. Iran.
Okay, you're getting closer. So we have Hamas, Iran through their proxies. Who else? Who actually planned and trained the fighters? Say it again? No? that date? What's the significance of that date? Now, why don't we know that? What's the significance of October 7th? See, these are just normal, basic things. What day did George W. Bush launch the attacks into Afghanistan? I'll give you a hint. It was October 7th, 2001. September 11th and September 12th, the gates of Gammon, the Battle of the Gates of Gammon. These guys have a long memory. It means something to them. Doesn't mean anything else. We don't even know. Our analysts in D.C., I can ask them the same questions. They don't know. So I'm gonna take just a few minutes. I'm gonna get my phone out. It's shocking to hear because Marcia said I had until midnight. But I'm going to take the time I have, and I want to paint a picture for you. Now, I want to do this. If you disagree with anything I say tonight, I want you to raise your hand. Don't wait until the end. Say, hey, I don't think that's true. Be willing to support whatever you say with facts. Does anybody remember what those are? Facts. Reality. Because our leaders have been fighting wars for 20 plus years and not a lot of facts. Now, I'm not a mathematician, but I do like math. George W. Bush was president on 9/11, yes?
Yeah.
Then we have Barack Obama. Then we had Donald Trump, and then we have Joe Biden. So that's 4 administrations from September 2001 to today. So technically 5 administrations, another Trump administration. And never since 9/11 have we actually defined the enemy in any national security document ever. Never. So who are we waging war against? We don't know. We have no idea. It's Al-Qaeda. Then, of course, those of us that were on the inside, like, what about Iran, Hezbollah, the Muslim Brotherhood, the Jamaat Islami? What about Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab? What about these movements? Are they not the adversaries? Because they're all working together. Iran was directly involved in the 9/11 attacks as far as training and preparing Al-Qaeda. Saudi Arabia directly involved, including their ambassador, Prince Bandar, in the United States, directly involved. His personal phone that no one has was found in Abu Zubaydah's phone book when he was captured. Senior Al-Qaeda leader with a private number of the Saudi ambassador in his pocket. That's called an investigative clue. And yet Mr. Trump tells us they're our great friends and business partners. So if you're expecting like a love fest for Mr. Trump, for me to bash Democrats, you're going to be sadly, I'm not going to praise the Democrats in horrible national security. But catastrophic failure on both sides of the political aisle for 24 years. Catastrophic. And that's why they are poised to win the war, the whole war. You cannot defeat the enemy if you do not identify the enemy. Can you? All right? And what we will talk about very briefly towards the end is, if you imagine, since we're in Texas, this is probably true of most of you in this room, you've all been to pistol or rifle range. So if you can imagine downrange at a rifle range, we get up there and there's no target. And I say, I want you to shoot the bullseye. What are you going to tell me? There's no target. There's no bullseye. And that's right. And our enemy has set us up that way. So that our government has spent billions of dollars and thousands of lives failing and aiding and abetting our enemies. I want to unpack this, but you need to understand it is catastrophically much worse than you think it is. So I'm going to deliver the message. It may not be the happy, joyful message you want. However, there is a campaign plan for victory, which we are a part of. But let me back up. I just want to do one little bit of my bio, because I do not like, this is not about me, I'm just a messenger. But when I got recruited out of the FBI by the Department of Defense by Rich Haynes, who became the Director of Strategic Planning for the National Security Council under Mr. Trump, I had already been quietly briefing people while I was in the FBI because it was, once I ran the training in 2006, it was the first training in the government. I created it and implemented it to talk about what we're talking about here. That until our leaders decide we're going to actually know why Al-Qaeda did what they did and why their objective is the exact same thing Iran's constitution says, it's the exact same thing Egypt's constitution says, it's the exact same thing Al-Qaeda says they want, the same thing the Hezbollah wants, the same thing Hamas wants, the same thing the Muslim Brotherhood wants, and 100% of the men we've killed or captured on the battlefields of Afghanistan, Iraq, Africa, Syria, Europe, the United States, 100% say that they are waging war for the exact same reasons, citing the exact same sources. And our leaders say it's got nothing to do with Islam. And they do not make any connection between the communists and the jihadis. So we're treating all of these issues as individual issues. Oh, what happened in the French Quarter in Louisiana? New Year's Day. What happened? Some crazy guy, happens to be Muslim, plows over people, jumps out, starts shooting, police close in and kill him. That story's gone. That story was gone in 30 hours. Right? Except, he went to a mosque that I briefed the leadership of Texas on 12 years ago. Owned by this organization, the Islamic Society of Greater Houston, which is a terrorist organization, but because they wear suits and they talk nice and they work with pastors in the community, we all think they're nice. But they're killers in suits, you see. That's how this war is fought. And Jeff Landry, the now governor, was the attorney general 8 years ago when I briefed him and laid out the network. So I would argue he's criminally negligent for those dead people in Louisiana. Because he knew it and he made an affirmative decision, which he said to me why he wasn't going to do anything about it. Because it would affect his political career. Well, that's a coward. And I know he and people like DeSantis and just a couple others are held up as like the best governors in the country. Well, that should tell you why we're getting crushed. He should go to jail. Because he's criminally negligent, isn't he? Yep. If a doctor or lawyer does something that's unprofessional, we call that malfeasance. If someone dies because of that, legally that's criminal negligence. And I've been in those courtrooms when people have gotten sentenced for that. Are we saying governors and national security professionals are not held to that same standard? That same legal standard? Okay. So the question I would ask you is, are we at war? And what does Black Lives Matter have to do with Iran, have to do with the Boston Marathon bombing, or Fort Hood, or 9/11, or the attack in Louisiana where some crazy guy shows up, except he went to Europe, or excuse me, he went to Egypt, and then went to Canada, and then came back because he got the green light. We don't even look at that. And the FBI guys investigating are clueless. Because there's zero training inside the government on what we're talking about. So, a couple things. Back to my first point. When I got recruited out of the Bureau to go into the DOD, I briefed all kinds of people. Former FBI directors, CIA directors, DIA directors, attorney generals in the United States, national security advisors and the president, all these kinds of people. 3- and 4-star generals and admirals, very few that I didn't brief. The intelligence officer from the Pentagon and his entire staff. Never, not once, the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, Intelligence Committee, Judiciary Committees, and well over 100 members of Congress, never briefed one person who had any idea what me and Steve Cochran were talking about when we briefed. Not one. They didn't understand the Islamic movement. They didn't understand the doctrine, the strategy, the network here in the United States. No knowledge at all. They had no idea that they worked very closely with the communist movement here and internationally. None. So they had no idea, from a tactical perspective, of when these things were happening, what they were even looking at. Complete catastrophic failure. No knowledge at all. So that because I had a 3-star general once throw it at me and tell me this is Stone Age law and no one follows it. Well, that guy should be in jail too. But what was he doing? He was chairing the counterterrorism center at West Point. That is how catastrophically broken we are. Broken. The last thing I want to say on this before we really dive in, when I go around the country training police and federal agents, and I'll just use one example, 300 plus police officers from multiple states, but most from Arizona and Phoenix in 2012. That's a random date, but I think that's about right. Maybe 11. And at the end, we just did a one-day training to give them the overview, to show them how clueless they were. And I asked, how many of you are or have been on the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force? And about 3 dozen of them raised their hands. And I said, okay, now here are the 2 questions I ask after every training. Did you know this before you came in here? Raise your hand. Nobody. Do you believe, raise your hand if you believe this is critical to protecting your community? 100% of hands went up. And yet, prior to that event, it was national news that myself and 2 of my colleagues were going to be there training. And the jihadis, the Muslims in suits, were protesting outside. Of course, they had to have armed guards for a police training. National news, and of course, the prosecutor from Maricopa County, great man, now sits on the Supreme Court of Arizona, who was the prosecutor at that time, and made it mandatory that every one of his prosecutors got our training, a 3-day training. And the media blasted him, the national media blasted him, the local media blasted him, the ACLU came after him, the Southern Poverty Law Center came after him, the jihadi organizations in Arizona and across the country came after him. And he stood firm when we did the training. We ended up going back there about 12 times to train. And still, and now, the leadership in Arizona is obviously batting on the side of the bad guys. But this is where we are. This is where we are in this country. This is what it takes to actually get the message out. Why? Because 90% of this war is being fought in the information space. It's to keep those people that I just mentioned, not just the police officers and federal agents, state investigators, senators, congressmen, national security advisors, to keep them from knowing it. And most of those people, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, are very arrogant. So once they're in the position, when some schlep like me shows up, it's like, let me explain to you this. They either, and this has only happened a few times in my whole life, where somebody in a position of authority looks at it and goes, oh my God, well, we got to do something. And when they do something, when the Louis Gomerts, or the Michelle Bachmans, or the Sue Myries, or the Chip Cravats do something, and they did it because we worked with them, who blasts them? Who leveled the guns at them? Who in Congress? No, the Republicans. John Boehner, Paul Ryan, Marco Rubio, McCain. Those turds leveled the guns at them, went on national media, stood on the House floor and condemned Michelle Bachmann for asking the Inspector Generals to simply open an investigation to look at the penetration of the U.S. government by Muslim Brotherhood operatives as a massive counterintelligence penetration, which it is. And her own party blasted her. That's where we are. I would argue we are over. So, if what I'm saying is true, it might explain this. The 4 men on the planet who took the axe, the hatchet, to the Muslim Brotherhood and Al-Qaeda. Saddam Hussein, Hosni Mubarak of Egypt, Muammar Gaddafi, who killed more Al-Qaeda fighters than anyone else on the planet, Bashir al-Assad, the leader of Syria. And what did we do? What did the United States do? We killed 2, we pushed 1 out of power, and the other one just was kicked out of power, and we applauded it. Now the Muslim Brotherhood and the global Islamic movement has no leadership at national level to deal with, thanks to the United States. Their strategy, their published strategy, the Muslim Brotherhood to be specific, says we will wage jihad by their hands and by the hands of the Muslims, the believers. They get our leaders to do their bidding for them. No better example than that. Since 9/11, we did this. Unbelievable. This is catastrophic failure. Whether you look at it from a diplomacy level, a political level, a warfighting level, any level, this is utter failure. And this to me is the best snapshot. Yes, ma'am, question?
So, you can roll those questions over the end, so I can.
That's okay.
Well, so I missed the meeting, I'm so sorry.
So, $10.
So why do you suppose that is?
Which is?
Why is our foreign policy not seeing and hearing this, or are they?
Oh, so there are a lot of reasons. I know we love, and I love to say, point when there are traitors like John Lennon, John Podesta, and Barack Obama. These guys are traitors. And these are guys, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, that are literally card-carrying communists. I mean, these are bad people. But there's plenty of them in the bureaucracy. But most of them, it's not that. Most of them are like Jeff Landry. Jeff Landry's a good guy. Ken Beer's a good guy. I still think he should be in jail. I said it on Twitter. That guy needs to go to jail. Love to go to another gator cookout with him, but he needs to be in jail after that. You know what I mean? These guys are cowards. They're afraid to say, this is the problem. I'm in charge. I have a legal duty to do something, and they do it. And the American people have been slow because the American people, I think, are still stunned at how catastrophically cowardly and incompetent is, I think, their leaders have been. And not just at the federal level, at the state level. Name one governor in the last 25 years that's actually done something to the enemy. There are a few governors that have created or supported legislation or created policies, but you don't win wars. I'll say this again, probably 2 more times in the next half hour. You don't win wars by fixing a policy. We're not going to win the war by shutting down the border. Should we have a border that we know is coming on? Of course you should. Any sovereign nation should. You don't win the war by doing that.
Well, you mentioned Marco Rubio.
Yes, I know it is. I voiced that, and people I know that are in, they've said, he's totally changed. I'm like, well, he's going to have changed quite a bit. But I'll just leave that. We'll see. We're going to talk more about it. But there are a lot of reasons our leaders aren't doing anything. Some are scared, some it's financial. But you have to understand, the biggest reason is because the enemy has been operating in this country for decades, and their plan is working. Who do you think runs the Middle East Studies program in places like Harvard and Notre Dame and Georgetown? The bad guys do. Literally Al-Qaeda at Georgetown. Prince Abdullah bin Talal. And he's one of the biggest funders of the global jihad individually from Saudi Arabia, our ally, our friend. So this is Mr. Trump's house. I mean, this is just, it's catastrophic. So what about, where do our SES level and military colonels and generals go for their master's degrees? Harvard, Georgetown. Yeah. So you want to know why they're clueless? I've had students come up to me who just graduated college. Some of them have their master's degree. They're like, I don't know that that's true, what you're saying, because I have a master's in Middle Eastern affairs. What you're saying, I've never heard of. I'm like, you're damn right, you never heard it. They intentionally don't teach it. The fact that you spent 6 years, your undergraduate, your graduate degree, learning this, and you never talked about Sharia, which is 100% the basis for everything they do. It's their blueprint for how they fight wars. They say it. I mean, it's just, they own us. They got us over the barrel. The fact that people think Qatar is an ally. There's one that, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, 3 biggest funders of terrorism on the planet. I mean, it's unbelievable. And who do we have? Who's our new? You can tell me, I don't think she's been, I think I haven't voted yet. But Pam Bondi. serious issues here. And we have to talk about it. Pretending that everything is fine now isn't going to win the war. That's the point here. But we can't win the war. So, I'll just let this play. This speaks for itself.
Is not our adversary. Muslims are peaceful and tolerant people and have nothing whatsoever to do with terrorism.
لا بد من أن نقيم أنفسنا على دين الله عز وجل وعلى شرع الله سبحانه وتعالى. لا بد أن نربي أبناءنا تربية على حب الجهاد في سبيل الله.
An overwhelming majority of the world's Muslims embrace Islam as a source of peace.
إن أشرف الموت هو القتل، وأشرف القتل وأعظم الشهادة هو أن يقتل الإنسان في سبيل الله.
Small fraction of Muslims propagate a perverted interpretation of Islam.
I also want to speak tonight directly to Muslims throughout the world. We respect your faith. It's practiced freely by many millions of Americans, and by millions more in countries that America counts as friends. Its teachings are good and peaceful, and those who commit evil in the name of Allah blaspheme the name of Allah.
Claims to be fighting on behalf of Islam. But the fact is that its hateful ideology has nothing to do with Islam.
من يريد أن يقول كلمة في الجهاد الحق هذا ضد المحتل ويقدم بيوت ويقدم شباب ويقدم خضرة نظام وتنزف جماجم، هذا ضد النصر والشهادة.
Islam is not part of the problem in combating violent extremism. It is an important part of promoting peace.
نقسم بدماء وأشلاء أطفالنا وعذابات أسرارنا وسنمضي نفجر أجسادنا.
Point towards police officer Barton, already firing. Second shot, he is literally inside that car. He's got his arm extended, firing at Officer Hartman. The suspect in question, the 30-year-old male from Yale, he has a Philadelphia address as well, I believe, is confessed to committing this cowardly act in the name of Islam.
In no way, shape, or form does anyone in this room believe that Islam, or the teaching of Islam, has anything to do with what you've seen.
Say that Islam is a religion of peace because Islam don't mean peace. Islam is submission. So the Muslim is the one who submits. You know, there's a place for violence in Islam. There's a place for jihad in Islam. The Quran is full of, jihad is always talked about duty in the Quran after Tawheed, belief. Nothing else is mentioned more than the topic of fighting.
The only deen Allah accepts is Al-Islam. And whoever sees any other deen apart from Islam will never be accepted.
أن الله عز وجل أوجب علينا نشر هذا الدين في الأرض.
Now, if you think I just cherry-picked videos, I could play you videos for about 9 years like this. Now, I want to point out that several of these men, if you notice, have a particular head covering, the big white band and a red cap. Those are Al-Azhar scholars. That makes them the cream of the crop on the planet for Islamic scholars. Now, how is it that everyone's getting their version of Islam wrong in the exact same way? And the answer is because they're not getting it wrong. And therein lies the problem. So this is where we find ourselves. From the Islamic perspective, we're at 0 hour. I can tell you, the Muslim Brotherhood here in the United States, as we sit here, is having a very heated discussion how many police departments you think are ready for shoulder-fired rockets and machine guns and hand grenades and 12 guys in your town? You could have 4 guys in your town if they're well trained. We're going to create complete havoc. We had, was it 2009, Najee Bouazizi in Colorado, comes to New York, and it was an operation with 12 suicide bombers. And it was a complete fluke that we took that cell down. And of course, literally, I would have to say, even as an FBI agent, it was like divine providence. There's no other way to put it, that got uncovered. The story's longer, but I'll just tell you. So what would have happened had it not been for a fluke is we would have woken up, turned on the news, and there would have been, imagine 12 suicide bombers all over the New York City and the tri-state area. Imagine that. What would America done? And it's what they're planning now is a lot worse than that. On the communist side, for them, this is the second French Revolution. This is about taking down power. So that's why they telegraph what they're going to do. Islamic law mandates, that's why they scream Allah Akbar is the last thing they do before they blow themselves up or run into a crowd of people with a machine gun. Because it's their legal duty. They have to make that final announcement to let everyone know that's what's going on. And there are all kinds of other things they do prior to that are big red flags. And I'll just say it as a matter of fact. Steve Coughlin and Steve worked for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Pete Pace. He was an attorney, military intel guy. When Rich recruited me out, he had recruited Steve out, and he put us together, and the two of us worked together for about 4 years in the DoD. We were the only two on the planet that predicted and briefed the 2011 Muslim Brotherhood Revolution in the Middle East with great specificity to include why things would stymie with Iran and Syria, how we were going to lose in Iraq, because it's 60% Shia, and even though our generals and State Department people said that didn't matter, it mattered. And we were so catastrophically broken that our State Department wrote a constitution for Afghanistan and Iraq that made Sharia the law of the land, which was Al-Qaeda's objective. So they got us to do that because our Islamic advisors told us it's no big deal. Just put it in there. You understand? Like catastrophic failure. The reason we were able to predict that, and be the only ones on the planet, we not only predicted it, remember 2010, we briefed it to many members of Congress that this was coming. It's because if you know how they communicate, you can do predictive analysis. Because they're communicating with each other in the clear. But their language and how they're doing it, if you know how to transcribe English to English through the lens of Sharia, you know what they're saying. This will make more sense to you probably in a few minutes, 10 or 15 minutes. So they're telling us they're out there. It's coming. Right? You see what's going on in Europe. There are at least 5 countries I would say are gone in Europe. Gone. And probably 3 out of the 5 aren't coming back. A couple of them have a chance if they actually start really fighting these guys, but I don't see it. But they're using the imagery. The communists are using the imagery of the beheading of Marie Antoinette, right? The French Revolution, the guillotine. Right? Even during the Olympics. Does anybody remember this? Anybody remember that?
Yeah.
During the Olympics. That was the people like, well, that was weird. Okay, look what's on next. What event is next? Went right over their heads. But the entire communist world in the United States knew exactly what they were saying. Because they're telling you right to your face, and it's going right over our heads. So, where are we? Well, we're in a war. And the communists have been in the United States for over 100 years, and they've been operating. The jihadis, the Islamic movement, has been here for over 60 years. And both of these movements, capital M movements, they have published doctrine, published strategy, they have hundreds of lines of operation, and they have massive networks of thousands of organizations that daily are doing this. So to your question again, the reason our leaders are catastrophically clueless is because the system is built that way. And it's built to elevate people who are either on their side or not going to do anything. I'm going to tell you stories all day about people I run into and work with inside that are just failed. So, we already talked about this. The primary form of warfare is in the non-kinetic. It's much more counterintelligence, espionage. It's much more subversion, cultural subversion, subverting our political system, the media, which you go back to the 60s, that was probably completed in the 70s, the education, the religion. Remember, there was the communists. They sent over 1,000 communists first through Catholic seminaries and then through Protestant seminaries. And that was 60 years ago. So if you think that they're not serious, like the Iranians, you want to know how serious they are. They sent our Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps for 4 years to study Christian theology so they can penetrate the underground Christian church in Iran. That's dedication. We don't have anybody on our side that dedicated. Organizational, not individual. So, you all said it at the beginning. There are all kinds of adversaries. There are hostile nation states. China, Pakistan, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey. Turkey leads the Islamic movement in the United States. The Turkish Muslim Brotherhood now formally controls. That's a hostile foreign power. Right? And a lot of other nations as well, but you also have all these other entities, right? I'll say it now and I might say it later. The reason that the work we do and that I do focuses on the Islamic movement and the communist movement is because where the rubber meets the road in Austin, Texas, in Wichita, Kansas, in Los Angeles, New York, in Rota, Spain, in Rome, pick a big city. It's the communists and the jihadis working together seamlessly at the ground level. So if you take their ability to operate at the ground level away, we win the war. That's why our efforts are all focused locally. I still have phone calls on pretty much a daily basis with people in D.C. who are like, what do we do? Right? And I'm happy to help. But the reality is, the federal government can only do so much because, number one, the level of corruption, and number two, the nature of this war has to be fought at the local level. Yes, sir?
Can you talk about black caucus membership?
Yeah, so financing a lot of this stuff. Pushing the propaganda. You look at these are not policies. DEI is a line of operation. LGBTQ, that's a communist line of operation. It has nothing to do with human rights. It is about using a narrative to impose control of the state power. That's the end goal. And BlackRock funds most of it. Meaning they don't fund the majority of it. I'm saying they're part of the funding market. They're a big part. Does that make sense? And I know how popular they are, but so is Nike. How many tens of millions of dollars did Nike donate to Chinese communists? Through BLM, for instance. Chinese communists. Right? And I think part of what would be nice is if we start locking up CEOs for funding hostile movements. I know it'll get tied in the courts and it'll be all that, because they'll say, well, the government is funding all that, and we're going to lock them up too. People that were directly involved in that. But until you actually start putting people in jail for this stuff and executing traitors, it's not going to slow things down at all. Yes, who else?
So there's a lot
Be
of...
careful, you're going to use up your question.
There's a lot of Jewish people, that run everything from universities to medical to all these things. How does that kind of work with regard to the Islamization of all of this? You would think there would be...
You think they would be smart? Because a lot of these people, they are, first of all, there are a lot of ignorant people. I'm not going to say they're dumb because they can be intelligent, but they're ignorant about what's going on. There are also a lot of people that, more than any other cultural group, I would say, certainly equal to others in the Jewish community. I mean, I have a running joke. I have the names of all the conservative Jews on my phone in America, and my conservative Jewish friends are like, you got to remember, a lot of the Jewish community we have here, they came over, and their parents and grandparents came over, they were socialists. A lot of them. So that's just the nature of the problem we have.
So I think the Jews would be really strict about universities.
Some are, and they're very active. And some, I mean, I've worked around the country enough to know, like, people in the communities that were very not properly engaged, people in the Jewish community who have, like, October 7th changed a lot of people. And it's amazing how many people realize, you know, when you can literally set a baby on fire and praise that and be cheering that, that's a level of evil that most people, like, it hits them on a core level. So they overextend themselves. Like I said, they have a unified objective, and it's communism. They have a unified objective, it's communism. They actually want communism. All right? There's so much to this, but because of the time constraints, I'm going to give you this, but I'll just put this out there. Council for a Livable World is an organization that was created by a Soviet asset. And it started out to influence young members of Congress, primarily senators, but also members of the House, so they would befriend them, and that their policies would go easy on the Soviet Union and actually help them get more done. Joe Biden publicly states that Council for the Livable World got him elected the very first time, and he supported it his whole career. And a year ago, or 2 years ago, he's on record on TV saying, I thank the Council for all their help. So did Nancy Pelosi, so did Elizabeth Warren, so did John Kerry, so did all these people, Hillary Clinton. I mean, it is, and that's a communist organization. And we know that now because in 91, after the fall of the Soviet Union, I'll put that in quotes, we had access, people had access to all these files, and now it's right in there. This is, you know, this was at the direction of Stalin himself and his spy chief, Beria. So, I mean, these are things we know now. So let me, hold on for a second, because we get to this. How do we know? How do we know about the communist movement from the 1920s to today in the United States? Because we have a mountain of information. And what I've done in my professional career is read it, watch it, talk to people who are defectors. You can watch days worth of testimony. And what do you learn? That they actually have a plan. They actually want to bring it out of the United States. They have a plan and a procedure to subvert the United States from within and to bring it down. And we know that. Declassified investigations, the House Un-American Activities Committee back in the 50s, declassified FBI investigations for decades. All this stuff that we have defectors who have come out, and today you can go to their websites. Go to Free Road Socialist Organization, or RevCom, or, you know, Democratic Socialists of America, which is one of the leading communist groups, that, well, I don't know, as of today, close to 100 members of Congress actively participating. And they're telling you who they are. So can I get somebody to read this for me out loud? Who can project with their voice?
When we get ready to take the United States, we will not take it under the label of communism.
So, Black Lives Matter. Why do I say they're Chinese communists? Because they are. Because it was created at the Liberation Road, Freedom Road Socialist Organization, the two biggest front groups for Chinese Communist China in the United States. And they work with Agents for Black Lives, Chinese Progressive Organization, and they work directly, are you listening? Directly with the Chinese consulates in the United States and Chinese Communist Party officials to direct actions against the United States by China. That's called a war. That's called waging war. So when they were burning down American cities, that was war. That's an art of war called unrestricted warfare from the Chinese perspective. It's the Quranic concept of war under the Islamic perspective. And all of those things were done in conjunction with the Islamic movement and the Communist movement here in the United States. Coordinated externally by hostile foreign powers. These are not domestic groups that were nice, had a nice beginning that went bad. They were not homegrown. They were created and controlled and continue to be controlled by hostile foreign powers like China, like Pakistan, like Saudi Arabia, like Qatar, like Turkey, et al. That's how they're waging this war in the United States. And if you look at how they're getting our leaders, Republican and Democrat, to go with it, it's unbelievable to me. So, in case you don't believe
it might, we actually do have an ideological frame. Myself and Alicia in particular, trained organizers. We are trained Marxists. We are super versed on sort of ideological theory.
Yeah, so I love it when they actually tell you who they are. So if anyone tells you, that we have much more, but for time's sake, so I'm just dropping these on the table. Again, if you think I'm full of it, raise your hand and say, I don't think that's correct. But bring some facts to the table, because we can do this all day. So, James Comey. Why do I have a hammer and sickle? Well, because when he stopped in 2003, being the prosecutor, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York City, he was going to be the Deputy Attorney General of the United States. And he gave an interview to New York Magazine where he said, what did he say? I moved from communist to whatever I am now, not even sure. Is that the guy you want as your Deputy Attorney General? Is that the guy you then 10 years later make the FBI Director? How many Republicans voted no for him? None. The guy publicly admits he's a communist. How about this guy? Spencer Rapone. West Point graduation day, he's got a Shea Rare t-shirt and communism's a win in his hat. He's a full-blown communism. Now, apparently you know the answer to this question. Where do communists go when they get booted out of the army? By the way, it took the army a year to get rid of them. They go to become professors at places like UT Austin. Yes. You like this little tweed jacket and the green sweater? It's a great look for him. I have a better look. Yes?
He's like CA.
Your teacher's awesome. Okay. I'm sorry you said that publicly because now I can duct tape them and put them in my trunk. I'll be the prime suspect. So I can't do that. That was a joke. Just only. But I think communists should meet that fate. That's just me. And of course, the Chinese unrestricted warfare. What is the Quranic concept of war? Is that if it advances Islam, it's lawful. To China, if it brings about victory, it's on the table. It's on the table. That has to be understood. They are fighting a very different kind of war. And most of it, like I said, is in the non-kinetic. And anyone who's been in this, there are very few guys who do it as long as I have, but a lot of my colleagues, and there aren't many, we've all, you get beat up. You know, lawsuits, investigations, internal investigations, IRS coming after you, you name it, it's all happened. Threats, we've all experienced it, because that's the nature of it. And they start out trying to do it administratively. I can't tell you how many venues. It's my first thought tonight when they changed the venue. That's happened. How many times has that happened? That's happened so many times where the person in the venue realizes, oh my God, this guy Guandolo, we can't host him here. You know? Because he says mean things. Doesn't matter if it's true or not. It said it's not nice. Well, now I want you to listen to this. This is a week and a half ago. Outgoing director of the FBI, of course, he ran away when he knew Mr. Trump was coming because he knows he should be indicted and hopefully he will be. But just listen to this 1 minute on 60 Minutes.
China's cyber program is by far and away the world's largest, bigger than that of every major nation combined, and has stolen more of Americans' personal and corporate data than that of every nation, big or small, combined. But even beyond the cyber theft, there's another part of the Chinese cyber threat that I think has not gotten the attention publicly that it, I think, desperately deserves, and that is Chinese government's pre-positioning on American civilian critical infrastructure to lie in wait on those networks, to be in a position to wreak havoc and can inflict real-world harm at a time and place of their choosing.
The Chinese have already insinuated malware into critical American infrastructure.
That's correct.
Like what?
Things like water treatment plants. We're talking about transportation systems. We're talking about targeting of our energy sector, the electric grid, natural gas pipelines. And recently, we've seen targeting of our telecommunications system.
That's interesting. And my question is, what the hell did you do about it when I was the FBI director? And the answer is not a whole lot, which I find fascinating. I'm leaving. Let me explain to you what disaster is looming that I've done nothing about. But I play that not to bash him, although he gave an award. He gave an FBI director's award to the vice president of the Islamic Association of West Virginia, which is a Hamas mosque. So he should have said, I'm going to give you an award, and I put her in handcuffs and take her away, but he didn't. And these are the kinds of things our leaders are doing. So the Islamic movement also has a unified objective, and that's Sharia. That's the only goal. It's not to convert you, it's not to kill you, it's to impose Sharia on the entire earth. That's a singular goal. We're going to get to that in a minute, but I want you to know the left, little logo there, that's the Muslim Brotherhood. That represents the Islamic movements, Tablighi Jamaat, Jamaat Islamic, but the Muslim Brotherhood is the largest and they control it here in the United States. The black flag of jihad, which is simply the Islamic Shahada, and if you made that green, that's the flag of Saudi Arabia, that's the military Islamic organizations, Al-Qaeda, Islamic State, Hezbollah, Hamas. And then you've got the OIC, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of the OIC. One.
You.
Yeah, for me, so you count. So one, have you ever seen these people before?
I've read their meeting notes from 2005 and their objectives.
Okay.
Plus their North American California plan in 91.
That's right. Okay, see? So you're ahead of the crowd. Thank you for coming with me. The OIC is the largest voting bloc in the UN. It's every Islamic nation on earth, 56 states, plus something they call the State of Palestine. 57 members. And every year they meet, and you never know it in America, but if you watch BBC or Al Jazeera or anything else, it's a massive story because literally representatives of the entire Muslim world come together in a huge room and they discuss how to advance the Islamic movement. And every 3 years, that meeting happens with all the heads of state of every Muslim nation on earth. And when they meet, they make decisions that are binding for the Muslim world. And in 1990, they passed, and in Mrs. Clinton, Secretary of State. Do you remember when a guy named Ahmadinejad was the president of Iran? And everyone's like, that guy's crazy. You know what comes out of his mouth? And my response was, yeah, what comes out of his mouth is Sharia. That's what comes out of his mouth. Normative Sharia. But anyway, he was talking about killing homosexuals. And he's like, we don't have homosexuals in Iran. You know why he thinks they don't? Because they kill them if they find them. So Mrs. Clinton, as the Secretary of State, said, we're going to bring him up on charges in the International Criminal Court. Well, that never happened, but let me give you a little glimpse of how this works in the real world. You drag Iran into the International Criminal Court, you say, you're killing homosexuals. And they're like, yep, you're going to be charged with human rights violations. No, because we're a party to the OIC, and the OIC served this to the UN, and it was accepted by the UN that we, the entire Muslim world, agree with the International Declaration of Human Rights, so long as it doesn't violate Sharia. Homosexuals can be killed under Sharia. Goodbye, have a nice day, and they walk out. See how that works? That's reality. That's the catastrophic failure. The same failure that led to our State Department people writing constitutions for Iraq and Afghanistan, making Sharia law land, because we had no idea what it was. Because our Islamic advisors, 100% of whom are hostile, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, at least Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas, are telling us, oh no, you just put it in there. Just make them happy. And we didn't. And there's been a lot of like, wow, we didn't even need to fight these guys. They're just rolling over. Yes?
UN Resolution 1618 that was published.
Yes.
Accepted without vote in 2011. Clinton was trying to fully implement that in in 2012.
That's right. So 1618 is essentially, it's criminalizing speech that is offensive to Muslims. Now we'll talk about this, but Islamic law says slander is defined in Islamic law. Let me first say, in U.S. law, if I say that you are a serial bank robber, and I tell your boss and you get fired, and it turns out that was a lie, you can sue me for slander because, pardon me, there were damages, but what I said was untrue, and there was a negative impact on you. That's the legal requirement for you to be able to sue me for slander. In Islam, it says you're guilty of slander, which by the way is a capital crime, if a Muslim doesn't like, that's the legal language, like what you say. Because you cannot say anything negative about Islam or the Prophet or Sharia. You can't. It's a capital crime. Muslim or non-Muslim. So when they do this, this is the imposition of Islamic law. And by the way, they are now, if you're not paying attention, this was going on 15 years ago when police in Scotland arrested a guy for a Facebook post, and everyone was aghast. And now, over France, England, Germany, that's happening on a weekly basis. People being put in handcuffs for a social media post that offends. That is ghastly against Western understanding of law and individual rights. You don't have a right not to be offended with something I say. What I say offends you, I will just say the truth. Generally offends those who don't have it. So, but if you're offended, and I honestly, I don't care. That's not my problem, that's your problem. If I say something that's a lie, and I'm spreading a lie, you should stand up and say, hey, that's not true. And I should change it if I know it's a lie, or I'm a bad person. So that's why I encourage people. I always do. Matter of fact, I've had, I don't know how many years this has been long-standing, but I tell people, what I say about Islamic doctrine and the U.S. Islamic Network, or Communist doctrine and the Communist Network, although I just added that, if anything I'm saying is wrong, and you can prove that, I will stop teaching it, I'll remove it from all of our publications, terrorism cases, and we have Islamic law we can read, and you have their testimony. When they stand in open court, and the judge says, would you like to say anything? They're like, oh yeah, I'd like to say something. We are waging war because as Muslims we're obliged to wage war against you until Sharia is the law of the land. We're not fighting for oil or money here. We're fighting for Sharia because it's a command from the law. And they all say it. We have undercover tapes from all kinds of perpetrators in the United States and Europe. We have court hearings. We have their testimony. And they're very clear about what it is they're doing and what they want. And they also are pretty obvious about what they want. Exhibit A here, right? And by the way, there's a huge billboard in Kansas that I took a picture of, which says Sharia, not questions, and there's an 800 number. So, I mean, and of course under it's like, sponsored by the Islamic Circle of North America, which is a hostile organization that the government should have shut down 20 years ago, but we don't. And the governor here in Texas works with IGNA, because you never heard of IGNA Relief for Helping Hands, and they help tornado victims and hurricane victims, terrorists. But anyway, I digress. Now, they also tell us, this is like a 10-second clip. Is it right to kill somebody who insults Muhammad?
Yeah, because she is just, she had the religion, I understand. But she shouldn't take out the bracket, you know?
Do you understand why people would want to attack?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll play this again. Isn't she nice? I mean, if you saw her on the street, you're like, oh, she seems like a nice, sweet lady. Did you hear the question? Is it all right to kill someone who mocks the Prophet Muhammad? Yeah, it is. It's okay. Is it right to kill somebody who insults Muhammad?
Yeah, because she is just, she had the religion, I understand. But she shouldn't take out the bracket, you know?
Do you understand why people would want to attack?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you understand why people want to attack her. Yeah. That's normative Islamic law. Slander. Capital crime. That's in Minnesota. This isn't in Syria. Okay, I got videos like that. The time is right now. I put this slide together. I put this slide together like 3 years ago. And these are just a handful of bad guys that have served in or are serving in the army. That includes Al-Qaeda, that's AQ, Hamas, ISIS, Hezbollah. That's Hezbollah there. That's Donna Crowley. She was at the FBI office and then served for the CIA. She's Hezbollah. Her family's Hezbollah. That's awesome. So it makes you wonder, really, how's our vetting doing? A couple of years, 2 years ago, my colleague, John Bennett, and I went and briefed South Carolina, who had asked us to come in because they had all these, actually it's 3 years ago, they had all these, refugees coming, right? And he was like, these people told me you could help me with this refugee problem. And I'm like, yeah. I said that, and I agreed to take it because I saw you made a public statement that you were quoted in the media saying, you're good because the DHS has vetted all these people. Yeah. So I literally created a book. Should have bought one, right? That doesn't matter. A little book. And the first thing we did, and he sat at his desk and I stood right next to him and we went through this book. But before we did, we explained to him in like 2 minutes because these were all Afghan refugees. And I explained to him why you cannot vet Afghans. Somebody tell me why you cannot vet somebody from Afghanistan. Say it again. Yeah. We don't even know their real name. Yeah, what else?
What did you say?
We don't know their real true name, no last name a lot of times. Why else? Partially, but simpler than that. They don't have the records. There's no DMV in Afghanistan. Have you ever been to Afghanistan? I've been there. It's all tribal. We had troops living in Afghanistan go to villages and they're like, wow, you Soviets are still here. Like, so what? Like, completely cut off from the world. Right? I'll leave that alone. But the point is, there's no way. If you had this many Afghans in the room, chances are 100% or 98%, because maybe 100% for each people out, their birthdays would be January 1st. Do you know why? Because they don't know when they were born. Their parents don't know. They don't care. How are you going to know them? That's why this is just an example. So once we explained to them why you can't know them, we started going through this book. We're like, let me tell you about this guy. How about this Hezbollah guy? for the CIA, not a proud leader. Oh, here's her sister married this global Hezbollah financier who worked directly with the leader of Hezbollah, the global leader of Hezbollah. And she's an FBI agent who then got recruited to go be a CIA case officer. And you know why she got charged? Because she went into the FBI system to check to see if her mother-in-law was under investigation and her family was under investigation. Because they're Hezbollah. And how much jail time did she serve? Anyone want to guess? Nothing. $500 fine, out. Then she wrote a book on Oprah, talking about because she's a Muslim, she's all, oppressed, right? Wrote a book with a flag in the background, crowd, repressed by the system. A bunch of crap. She should be in jail. But anyway, I digress. So, the point is, even if we could vet, and I'm going to give you a few examples here, even if we could vet, we have failed catastrophically. So let's just, if we don't get to that, those are some of the terrorists in suits that served around. First of all, I have to tell you, is this thing going to work? It's not going to work on the TV, the little, what you call it. So, far right, one guy down. See the old guy? Yeah, Majid. Iranian-born Muslim.
What's his name?
Majid. Iranian-born Muslim. Can't make this up. He was the assistant director for the FBI's weapons mass destruction program. Then he got moved, Iranian-born Muslim, in case you didn't hear me. Then he got moved to be the assistant secretary of defense for nuclear matters. And now he's the director of Savannah Labs, which is the largest labs in America for the Department of Energy for nuclear matters. That's where he is right now.
Which administration hired him? Like, what was the?
Oh, that was
Bush.
Bush, I think, yeah.
Bush.
When he was first with the FBI. Okay, so, in the time we have, how many of you think what I'm saying about Sharia, Islamic law, is exaggerated? I mean, be honest.
No.
Because
they tried to Cedar Park and the governor said, no, if I'm correct, Marsh should be done for sure.
Yeah, so here's why it matters. This is not going to be a Sharia class, but I want you to understand really just a couple things. Sharia comes from the Quran and the Sunnah, the example of the Prophet Muhammad. The Quran can only be understood in two very important ways. Number one, the Quran is not written chronologically. There are 114 chapters. When the scholars put it in chronological order, the Quran says what comes chronologically last rules. That has legal precedent. And the last chapter to talk about relations between Muslims and non-Muslims, chapter 5, says, take not the Jews and Christians as your friends, they are friends and protectors of each other, and you Muslims who take them as friends are of them, and you will go to hell. Chapter 9 is the last to talk about jihad, and it says, fight and slay the unbelievers wherever you find them, and lie in wait for domination and ambush. Then what did Muhammad do? He's the perfect example. He's the Insan al-Qayyim. He's the perfect example of a man. Muhammad is. So everything he did is perfect. He married a 6-year-old, consummated marriage when she was 9. He tortured people. He was there after the Battle of the Trench and participated in beheading up to 900 Jews. Right? He said, in the most authoritative report of what he did and said, he's been commanded to fight the non-Muslims until they submit to his law and say the Shahada. So my question is, and there's much more, but for purposes of tonight, so then my question is, where's the leeway there? And here's the other thing. Remember, $1,000 cash. Name one book of Islamic law ever authoritatively published, or one Islamic school, any century, any nation, that's ever taught something other than that. I mean, I've had literally people, they don't know what you're talking about. I'm a witness or something like that. We're saying, God, do it. If you tell me, or not already picked on you, if you tell me, hey, you know, to me, the term naturalized citizen, this is what it means to me. And I'll say, I couldn't give a crap what it means to you. I go to the U.S. Federal Code, and I open it up, and that's what a naturalized citizen is, not what you say it is or what you think it is. Georgetown, they teach the students there during early studies, they have a book called the Quran, the early revelations. Because what comes later is never discussed. See? So it's all the non-jihad stuff. Because it's all a shell game. So I just want to do, for the purposes of this, a few things. This is the most widely used textbook in U.S. Islamic schools. And I'm going to go to the very first page where there's actually something. Chapter 1, Section A. What is Islam? And I'm going to ask you, because Riley, you look like you're bored, read that title. Read that out loud. So everyone can hear you.
Islam is not a religion, however, but a complete way of life.
Right. So they're teaching, this is for 11, 12-year-olds. Most likely he's looking at this assumption. So they're saying Islam's not a religion, it's a way of life. Then, there's so much more. And then, by the way, it lists the duties, the 3 duties of Muslims. Dawah, calling people into Islam, encouraging good and forbidding evil. Good and evil is defined by what? Sharia. And then this other one called, what's that word right there? Jihad. But they of course mean like internal yoga, spiritual betterment. What's that a picture of right there? It's a tank. Yeah, in case the little children are confused. If anyone dies in jihad, they automatically will go to paradise. A shaheed or martyr is described this way by Allah. Don't think those killed in Allah's cause are dead. They are alive, finding their bounty in the presence of the Lord. This is taught to 11-year-olds in U.S. Islamic schools, right here in Texas. Found 11 copies of this at Goodfellow Air Force Base in their Muslim prayer room. Yeah, because this is what's being taught. You know why it's being taught? Let me answer that question.
Recruitment.
It's taught because it's Islam. That's why it's being taught. It is a capital crime in Islam for a Muslim to teach another Muslim anything about Islam that's not true. I'll say it one more time.
Wow.
It is a capital crime in Islam for a Muslim to teach another Muslim anything about Islam that's not true. And it is obligatory, as I will show you in a moment.
Punishment by death.
Yes, it's capital crime.
Cut the head off.
And it is, it's okay. It is obligatory for a Muslim to lie to a non-Muslim if it advances Islam. There it is. Did you read this highlighted sentence for the 11-year-olds? Right there.
The duty of Muslim citizens is to be loyal to the Islamic State.
Yeah. And if we go back to that very first question, or very first sentence in the book that we had read, Islam's not a religion, however, it's life. And then it goes on to explain that the life is governed by the Sunnah and the Quran, which is Sharia, and that Muslims' duty is to impose Sharia on the earth. So I tell you, what they teach, where is it different from what Al-Qaeda teaches? And we have all their stuff, published in a monthly magazine, published in Charlotte, North Carolina, in English, for God's sakes. You can just read it. Where is anything ISIS did on the battlefield? Because they have classes on the battlefield. This is how important it is for them when they're not fighting. Same. And I have books from Europe, from Africa, books like this that are used there. It's the exact same. Because it's a capital crime for a Muslim to teach another Muslim something about Islam that's not true. And I want you to take my word for it. But Book R, holding one's tongue, look at that, open it right up. What's that word right there under section R80?
Lying.
Lying. What's that say?
Permissible lying.
Permissible lying. It is permissible to lie if attaining the goal is permissible, and obligatory to lie if the goal is obligatory. So let's go back to Book 08. When we talk about jihad, the question is, how many of you think jihad is obligatory?
Is a what?
Obligatory.
Jihad is obligatory. Okay, well, you're right. What's this say?
Jihad is also personally obligatory for everyone.
Right, he explains that. Personally obligatory under these circumstances. Jihad is obligatory. It's the purpose of Islam. The purpose of Islam is to wage war until Sharia is imposed on the world. That's it. So, it's obligatory for Muslims to teach other Muslims what's true about Islam, and it's obligatory for them to lie to non-Muslims to advance Islam. So, either, since we have their textbooks, and I have dozens of others, either Muslim children are being lied to in U.S. Islamic schools and European Islamic schools and Asian Islamic schools and African Islamic schools, or Muslim leaders are lying to our leaders. Which do you think it is? I'll just let you figure it out. No, no, you figure it out. You figure it out. Only thing I'm going to say about the tafsir, because you probably don't know it, every sentence in the Quran is legally defined. Let me say it again. Every sentence in the Quran is legally defined. There is no such thing in Islam for Muslims to say, you know, I was reading Surah 9, and this is what I believe it means. That's a capital Quran. It means what Islam says it means. So if I go to 9:5, fight and slay the unbelievers wherever you find them, and lie away for them in each and every ambush, it legally defines what that means. Fight and slay the unbelievers wherever you find them, and wherever you find them is legally defined as on the earth in general. Right? And then it explains, you capture some, you kill others. It's very explicit. There's no gray area. The thing that's fascinating to me, having done this as long as I have, is we still have leaders that will say that Islam's, you know, it's radical. It's radicalism. I'm like, the only thing radical about what ISIS and Al-Qaeda do is they're radically right. They've never been wrong. I challenge you, find something that Bin Laden ever published, that Zawahiri ever published, the current leadership of Al-Qaeda, the current leadership of Islamic State, the current leadership of Hamas, the Iranian Constitution, the Egyptian Constitution. Find something they've said or published that's incorrect according to Islamic law. Good luck. So, and we have
Do you
this.
think Islam is at war with the West?
I think Islam hates us. There's something there that there's a tremendous hatred there. There's a tremendous hatred.
So, that was during the 2016 campaign, you said that, and it made national news because, you know, everyone freaked out, right? Because obviously, Islam's a religion of peace, because that's what we're told, and so that's the mantra. George Bush told us that, Barack Obama told us that. Well, this is at the National Cathedral in 2000, technically, I guess 17, but this is the inaugural prayer service. And that's Mohammed Mansion, the former vice president of the Islamic Society of North America. At the time, the largest Muslim Brotherhood network in the United States. Largest Muslim Brotherhood Hamas network in the United States. The largest terrorism financing trial ever successfully prosecuted in U.S. history. A case, the U.S. versus Holy Land Foundation, which was adjudicated where? Dallas, Texas. Why? Is there such a huge Hamas network in Dallas? Because Chicago is the headquarters for Hamas in the United States. Number 2 is, rhymes with Dallas. Yeah, it's Dallas. So that's why the case was here. Oddly enough, when I was indicted after 9/11, Holy Land Foundation was the largest Islamic charity in the United States, and it was a Hamas group. Interesting. Data points. If you pay attention, it all becomes very clear. But there's a jihadi at Mr. Trump's inauguration. But he had met Mr. Trump earlier. Mr. Trump is a businessman in New York, because that's how it works. So who in the administration understands what we're talking about? Someone want to shout out a name? And yes, chances are high I'm going to thrash you when you say a name. But it's fun for me, so just do it anyway. What?
Headset.
So neither of those guys.
Headset.
What?
Headset.
Headset?
Headset. Headset.
Exit.
Bonnie.
He doesn't? No. Headset? No. We're working on that.
But that's
so,
your guess.
Let's look what J.D. Vance said on knowing what you now know. Listen to this.
It was most controversial things I've ever said is, what is the first Islamist, right? It's important to separate. There are Muslims who are not Islamists, right? Islamists are like theocrats, right? What?
What? Nonsense, incoherent babble, and he's the Vice President of the United States. This was Mr. Trump's first national security advisor. I have to hold my tongue because I only have really bad things to say about this guy. He's a military general, so what would you expect?
Much like ISIL, who uses irreligious ideology, or this perverted interpretation of religion to justify violence. We will defeat today's enemies, including terrorist organizations like DICE, who cynically use a perverted interpretation of religion to incite hatred.
A perverted version of religion. Okay, well, where's the true Islam? I keep hearing that. Where's the true love thy neighbor Islam? Where is it taught? Show me one freaking book. Show me one Islamic school in North America that teaches something other than what Al-Qaeda teaches. Okay. You've got this knucklehead, Guandolo, who's now a special envoy for the Middle East for special missions action. And after the Louisiana attack, this is what he puts out on social media. Because you have a senator saying, well, once again, Muslims attacked us. And in jumps Guandolo to say they're radicals. Even Muslims call them radicals. I mean, this is the level of incoherence. They have rendered our leaders incoherent. Now, well, I said it on an interview that's public, so I can say it here. I assess Guandolo as an asset of the other side. And which is problematic because he's well liked in the Trump administration. I think he's an active asset for the other side. You can call me on that, I won't argue with you about it. If you say I think you're wrong, I'll say, okay, maybe I am. But man, all the hallmarks are there. He has been stepping in to defend Hamas guys in suits around the country quietly. Who brought the Hamas and Hezbollah guys on the stage with Mr. Trump? Who organized that? Guandolo. Sebastian Gorka. The Hungarian intelligence, they publicly say Gorka is a snake oil salesman, that he's not an asset for the UK or for Hungary. In DOD, the guys I work with assessed him as an asset, either of the UK or Hungary. Or whatever it is, if you've read his book, or could stand even reading more than 10 pages of it, what he says in there, again, is incoherent. And I was there when he said publicly 99.9% Muslims don't support or agree with Al-Qaeda, which even publicly, the leadership of the Muslim community right after 9/11 said that they do agree. A large number of Muslims in America share the grievances that bin Laden stated was the reason for the attack on 9/11. She did it on CNN, for God's sakes. And nobody said boo about it. Because she's Muslim and we can't offend her. And then here's a poll from 2015. 51% of Muslims in America want Sharia, totally agree. Another 70% said not sure. And 29% said they agree. In 2015, that's 10 years ago, agreed that violence should be used against people that insult Muhammad. In case you think. By the way, we have worldwide polls. The most unbelievable poll ever conducted by Pew was global in the Muslim world. That was 2013. Look at the percentages of these Muslim countries that support Sharia people. And these aren't just small countries. Pakistan, Bangladesh, Indonesia. That right there is like 700 million people. Or whatever, 500 million people. These are huge percentages, and these are in the high 80%. So this idea that what Al-Qaeda says its objective is, which is an Islamic State under Sharia, is something relevant. So this was the leaked program for the Trump inauguration. And look who's on there. Imam al-Husseini.
Who?
Imam al-Husseini. Who is he? There he is. First of all, he was on the Cheyenne show back in 2000. He's a known entity. He's a Hezbollah guy. He's an Iranian asset. And he was going to speak, he was going to offer prayers at the trumpet operation a week ago. And in this interview, Sean Hannay's trying to get him to say, just admit that Hezbollah is a terrorist organization, and he wouldn't. Well, why would he? Well, because he publicly posted, these are the kind of leaders we should be having. I told him, this is the guy that gets invited to the White House. How many of you know who Siraj Balaji is? First Muslim ever to give prayers inside the House of Representatives. Advocate for jihad, unindicted co-conspirator in the 1993 World Trade Center bomb. How about this guy? Raise your hand if you know who he is. I'll give you a hint. His son is married to Tiffany Trump. And I would be delicate here for a lot of reasons. But if you look at it, I'll just encourage you to look at his business ties in Africa and where he puts his money and who he supports. And I'll just say this, it rhymes with Hezbollah. Okay, let's go on with this. Now this guy is no longer there, but Maher Bitar was under the last administration, up to a week ago, no question. He was the director of intelligence for the National Security Council, and he is Hamas. There's Farouk Mitha, who is the Islamic advisor to Mrs. Clinton and to Joe Biden when they were candidates, and he's on the board of MKs, which is a Hamas group in the United States. He now works at the DOD. Hopefully they punted him out, but I don't think they have yet. That's Ariel Talatari, Chief of Staff, arguably one of the most important positions in the Department of Defense. The ASD Solon, Assistant Secretary of Defense for Special Operations and Low Intensity Conflict. That's who I worked for when I was in DOD. Not her, that position, the ASD Solon, because of what we were doing fell into there because he was operational. She's the Chief of Staff, was, for him, and she's an Iranian agent. Part of a fairly now well-publicized Iranian network inside DOD that included the special envoy to Iran for the State Department. It's unbelievable. So my question to you is, how's our vetting doing at FBI, Secret Service, DOD, State Department? And I'm going to answer for you, there is no counterintelligence apparatus in the United States. It's functioning. None. That's why. Who's that? I think this is the last one, but I think I might throw two more in because I got so excited. Because these are just fun. This is kind of fun for me because it's so disgusting. But that's Abdurrahman al-Moody on the left. There he is with President Clinton. Advised President Clinton for 2 terms, and Vice President Clinton was in the White House more than any other Muslim, was a goodwill ambassador for the State Department, actually participated in Middle East peace talks with the United States, created the Muslim chaplain program for the Department of Defense, and he is, Al-Qaeda. Yeah. Largest fundraiser for Al-Qaeda in North America. When he got taken down, and the Treasury Department actually said it in an acceptable way, we know when he got arrested and picked up in England, Al-Qaeda communicated that that was a big hit for them. So we know how important it was. And I was the last guy to interview him before his sentencing in the Eastern District of Virginia, and he is a big turd. And now he's out of prison. He got sentenced to 23 years of prison, but now he's out because that's just what we do to jihadists. We let him go. And in case we're thinking that it's just the Democrats, I will just remind you it's not. You can thank Karl Rove for that. Right there, as well as the other terrorists that got into the Bush camp. So, this is a few days after 9/11 when President Bush spoke at the Islamic Center of Washington, owned by Saudi Arabia, a jihadi mosque. And on the one side is Nihad Allah, the leader of Hamas in the United States, and on the other side is Khalid Safori, who's the deputy to that guy, the Al-Qaeda guy, who got sentenced to 22 years. How's that for information dominance? Like, to me, that's probably one of the best pictures ever. Because that is like, we own you. We are literally standing next to the president. This is why we are losing this war. There she is. I already told you her story. Okay, and this one, I have to say, now, Gumrah Kamalov was trained by the State Department 5 times in weapons and tactics training, including training in the United States. Does anybody know who he is? ISIS military commander. vetting. And actually, when it was brought to the State Department's attention, this is how they responded. All appropriate vetting was undertaken in advance of this training. Not, holy crap, we trained an ISIS guy, we were so sorry, obviously we're broken. No, hey, he was vetted. And that was State Department spokesman Jim Joel said that. So I guess we just don't care. Now, in these last few minutes, because I know you guys want to wrap up, I want to make a few points. One, these movements, the counter-Islamic movement, are working seamlessly at the ground level across the United States. And I can tell you, from Raleigh, North Carolina to Wichita, not just in LA, New York, they're working. I assessed, and I published this, to take down Texas, I can't remember what year, it was 4 or 5 years ago. Houston is, I would rate as the worst city in the country for the combined communist jihad threat. It is horrible. And if you look at the local officials, and some of you in here probably know Houston, you look at the local leadership, it's literally communist and jihadist threat. That's for another day, maybe. But this is important that you understand this. Just like Iran works with Al-Qaeda, works with Hamas, works with Muslim Brotherhood, and if you go and you talk to the government analysts, they'll tell you, the Shia and the Sunni don't work together. They do. It's all one big happy family, and they're working with the communist movement. Communist China is in a strategic partnership with Islamic Republic of Iran, right down to the ground level. These organizations work together. Next to last point, splinter operations. This is a technical term, but here's what it means. The suit-wearing jihadis, like the Muslim Brotherhood organizations, point to Al-Qaeda and these other groups, and they say, yeah, look at those guys carrying weapons and killing people, they're horrible. But I wear a suit, so I must be a good guy, right? And we believed that for a while. And there they are on Fox News and CNN telling us. And then people started figuring out, well, actually, some of these organizations, there's a lot of evidence out there of who they actually are. And so people started distancing, realizing they're bad. So they knew that. So then comes the splinter. They splinter off, right? They know we can no longer swallow this, right? So they splinter off to this. We can no longer take that. They splinter off to the moderate Muslims, right? Raheel Roberts, Yasser, Kanta Ahmed, it's always on Fox News. Talk about, there's a difference between Islam and Islamism. There's Sharia and Sharia law. Totally incoherent, but this is propagated by supposedly conservative media. So that we say, well, okay, so now we've splintered off 3 times now. These guys we're so hungry, except I go back to that slide with all those pictures. 100% of the senior Islamic advisors and even mid-level Islamic advisors in the government have turned out to be terrorists. That should be a clue for there's a problem. Well, now what we got is, right, we're splintering off the CACR, these organizations that we're starting to realize are bad, to these fun people that dress nice, they smile, they look good, they talk very nice, they're splintered off. And now we've got conservative Republicans, Muslims, and now that's the next splinter. And you've got people who are on the conservative side, and if I step in and say, yeah, no, he's a bad guy, they won't ever you can't ever get past that. They're like, no, he's not, he's my friend. So they turn and attack you. That's how it works. Yes, ma'am?
Well, I was wondering if you were going to mention CARE, because Bill and Ron and I were down at the Austin Capitol in 2012, I think it was, supporting the American Law for American Courts bill.
Yes.
And to get Sharia law out, and CARE is all over Austin back. 12 years ago, we were in an office, and it was asked the question, was CARE in here? And they said no to us. And one guy in the back of the room goes, yeah, they're in here.
And now they have a Muslim day.
And so.
And who hosts it?
The state legislators.
CARE. CARE hosts it.
And Patrick was promoting it.
That's right. That's right. So to be clear, the U.S. Muslim Brotherhood, on the orders from the International Muslim Brotherhood, years ago created the Palestine Committee, which was supposed to be created in every country where the Muslim Brotherhood exists. The Palestine Committee is Hamas. And the U.S. Palestine Committee created 4 organizations. One was the Holy Land Foundation, which was the largest terrorism financing trial. The other 2 got shut down. And the 4th was CACR, created in 1994. That is a Hamas organization. On my website, my website's johnguandolo.com. There's a thing called CACR Hamas. You can just go through the evidence. There's no doubt they're Hamas. They're hosting a Muslim Day at the Capitol, supported by Republicans, supported by the governor, by the Attorney General. Now, the last point to be made about how do we actually win is this. And then I'll take questions and you tell me how. All of these things represented by these pictures represent issues. I don't think there's any issue more important than defending the life of a human being, right? Because everyone has a natural right to life. But these are all important. The right to freely express yourself, the right to keep and bear arms. Right? You have a natural right to your life, therefore, it's the understanding in the West for over 1,000 years. You have the right to bear the tools to do so. The right to keep bear arms is not a constitutional right, it's a natural right. Vax mandates, forcing people to put things in their body they don't want. Any of this, the extension of government intrusion into your world. We can have a whole discussion about that. Normally we do in the 3-day or even the 1-day program. Raise your hand and tell me how many wars in world history have been won by fixing policies or changing issues. How are wars won?
Military money, breaking.
Yeah. People beating and breaking things, military wars. You identify and you vanquish the enemy. That's it. Or you achieve unconditional surrender. We are in a war that we don't recognize because there are not tanks rolling down the streets of Austin. But it's a war nonetheless. I almost put it in here, but I knew this was going to go long. But it's odd that Bill Maher is on this issue and on the communist issue is actually an ally. Most of you probably don't listen to him because he's so far left. Yeah. But on these 2 issues, he's right there and did a segment on Mao's the Red Guard, and those are the people that went around enforcing the communist mandates. Well, in Austin, you have a Red Guard. It's a communist front. They have a website. It is a full-fledged Chinese communist front. And it's right there in Austin, and they do marches down the streets.
And one time you talked about one of the mosques right here in Lincoln County, which is Rushy Freeport, that's from the suburbs. And then there was a specific operative in that particular mosque. I don't know if he's still there.
I haven't checked, but it's 2 minutes of research.
Right.
Yeah. So you've got...
I got 13 mosques within a 50-mile radius here in this territory. 50. 5 of them. And within 50-mile radius.
Yeah. It's that is extensive. So the question is, what we do, first you have to identify what the actual cause is, not the issues. The issue isn't inflation. The issue isn't the subjugation of free speech. The issue is not fill in the blank, the border. Those are important issues, and for a sovereign nation, you have to address them. But to win a war, you actually have to identify the enemy, these movements that are legally, you can identify and constitutionally and lawfully address, and they have to be identified and vanquished. And we are so far along in this war, not sure what that looks like now, but the training we do is we go into counties across the country, and we train the citizens and where they'll do it, local elected officials and police, and train them how to identify organizations and leaders of these movements, people financing them, how they're operating, and the key elements, who are the good guys, who are the bad guys. And literally by the time the training is over, they walk out with a comprehensive plan, an organized team, who's the team leader, who's doing what, and they start taking it to the bad guys. And we have several areas of the country where they have literally steamrolled bad usually it's right around 100. I mean,
Couldn't remember what it was.
but it's right around $100, and usually it's because we've got people underwriting the training.
Full day.
Yeah.
A full day of training, $99. This is, like I said, tip of the iceberg. If you're interested, I guess y'all have a sign-up sheet here. I'm interested in doing this, and I'm going to try to get some Travis County folks as well. If anyone wants to learn more about this, please sign up to do that. And John, thank you so very much for being here tonight.
Yeah.
I do want to give you a little something. This is one of the upcoming speakers that we're going to have, Fire Money. Kevin Freeman, he'll be one of our upcoming speakers. And then some of our team have signed this. If y'all can get the sign list for John, if you will, up the back, there's a marker back there. We hold these truths to be self-evident, and I know you know the rest of that story. So be sure to shake his hand and sign that before we leave. He's got tons of books back here. And if he has questions,
Do we ask questions?
any more questions? Yes, yeah. Well, can I have like you or something?
You can, yes, you can.
Okay, so what do you think about some of the academy members that are coming in? You've got Tulsi Gabbard, you've got Christino, and what you say you're working on Cash Patel and also Pete Henderson.
So Cash Patel, Richie has worked with Cash Patel when I was at DOD. I never had experience with them, but they were all positive. I think he's probably the best because he knows how the system works.
He's aware of what's going on.
He's not as aware as he needs to be, and some of the criticism of some of these guys are legitimate. Like Cash Patel doesn't really understand how the FBI works, but I will tell you he understands it. With guys like us that were in DOD, he has a pretty good understanding of where it's broken, and it's pretty much broken from top, pretty much almost down to the agent level. The training is broken, the hiring process is broken, the way they promote people is broken. I'm not sure it's how.
Are you going to go back and retrain?
Wait to see. We'll see. We'll see. So, I think Patel's a good pick. Pete Hegseth, some of the attacks on Pete are legit. He doesn't know how, like the mechanisms of DOD, but Lloyd Austin did. He knew, right? Lloyd Austin's a disaster, right? So I think somebody like Christina, she doesn't know anything about counterintelligence. She doesn't know. But I think, quite frankly, who cares at this point? We don't have a functioning cabinet. Like at some point, I feel like Mr. Kline, I don't know this, but if it was just like, hey, go in there, set things on fire, see what catches, and if there's something left when it's over, let's do it. I mean, there's a big argument. You can shut down DHS. I mean, it's been a disaster since it was created. So there are a lot of these things, Pete doesn't understand, like the acquisition system. And the entire DOD acquisition system needs to be leveled. I mean, there's so much wasted money, there's so much graft, it's horrible. But we got bigger problems with this. We have war fighters and generals that need to go to jail. Generals need to go to jail. So the problem is so immense, he has the ability to go in there and be like, all you got, I don't know if you guys are aware of what's happening. They cleared out the NSC, they cleared out the headquarters level of CIA, they literally went in, all you people, pack your crap and get out. Like your clearances are being stripped. And I'm not just talking about the 50 to 1. I'm talking about, there's stuff going on that's not making the news and it's great. They're just,
There seems to be some good things going on.
absolutely. Yeah, and I agree with all that.
And Trump's wanting to get the anti-Semitic.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so much, my point is, it's so much bigger now. The level of penetration inside the federal system and even in the state system is so significant. It really needs many of these things. He's got it, and he's doing the right thing. You're going to stop the money, no federal money going anywhere, and you've got to shut down cabinet level positions. I mean, Department of Education. I would argue with Health and Human Services. A lot of these things need to be shut down. There's no constitutional basis for it, but I mean, it's such an overwhelming task. So my point is, some of the picks are problematic. I would argue Pam Bondi is because of her massive money from Qatar. You cannot tell me you're going to be objective.
Do they know that? Was that brought up?
She was asked about it. She said, I'm just going to get $150K a month from Qatar. It's not a detraction. Come on. That's just not even realistic. Calvin didn't get it, I didn't get it, Amy didn't get it. All these guys that were subject matter experts weren't allowed in, but they pulled in all these Obama people, Bush people that were not going to ever fix the problem. And that's why the first administration, quite frankly, that was.
And you guys, we do not charge for these meetings. We've got a ton of books here. If you guys want to help with the gas back to Dallas, please think about helping him.
We take gas.
Yes. But, I mean, the books are an unbelievable knowledge base here, and they don't get dated because this has been around a long time. So please.
I want to say, thank you for saying that. I want to say just one quick thing. One, we'll stay, I know you guys start cleaning up stuff. I'll stay over here, we'll stay here, as long as the city tells us we gotta move out.
9 o'clock, we need to be out here with this room clean the way we found it.
Okay. But I will say, there's a reason, we didn't know. Normally your meetings get 50, 60 people. We knew because of the change, it might be less. I was okay with that. Why travel 3 hours to come down here? It's because the solution is right here.
It's in Austin, Texas.
This is where we're going to live. Winston Churchill, I'm not comparing myself to Winston Churchill, he went around and talked to sewing clubs before World War II kicked off to tell people, this is the problem, here's what we need to do to prepare. There's so much work, right? All the things we used to have in place, right, are civil preparedness in communities that we don't have anymore. We are, right now we're pretty wide open, and there's a lot we can do. So I appreciate y'all being here. Yes, ma'am.
So I always ask people to give us some good news.
Yeah.
So we just did a little bit of good news, but overall, what is something that you see in this fight?
Number one, Mr. Trump is taking it very seriously. From his inauguration speech of literally leveling the guns at Mr. Obama and his administration, Mr. Biden's administration, calling him out right there in front of him about the damage and the danger to this country and what has to happen. And the fact that they're not just going after the top level, they're going into the bureaucracy already and dragging people out. It's got to be, there are literally thousands of more people that need to be kicked out. But it's promising. But the other thing I would say is, the reason I keep doing it, if I didn't think there was any hope, I always tell people, I'd be on a beach in Tahiti drinking my guitar, and be like, good luck. Is because this works at the local level. I can tell you there are communities. I have to be careful about where we train, where they're actually doing very aggressive stuff. But I will tell you there are areas of the country, they're steamrolling the bad guys because they're really thousands of citizens, multiple counties, and then they start working together, both politically and practically on the ground towards the enemy. This just has to be scoped much more. Yes, ma'am.
How much progress does it make in Dearborn?
None. Dearborn's a disaster, Minneapolis, gone. But I would argue places like Nashville, real bad shape. It's a lot of Tampa, Houston. It's going to take, that's not where I would start. You start where you can actually, I use the word fortify, and that means you've cleared out most of the